Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another Nonfiction November vlog. Today, and for the remainder of me filming this video, however long it takes, we will be reading memoirs in this vlog. So I've chosen two memoirs. One of them is Year of the Tiger. This one could cover multiple bingo events on my bingo board, which you can see right here. So I'm not sure exactly which one I'm going to check off with this book. I might do double points, check off a couple different squares, but I haven't decided yet. So this is one of them, Year of the Tiger: An Activist's Life by Alice Wong. I have previously read a book by Alice before. She edited what is it called? Disability Visibility. Yes. She was the editor of Disability Visibility, which is a book that I gave 4.75 stars, so I have high expectations for this one. And then I have There's Always This Year on Basketball and Ascension by Hanif Abdurraqib. And I have taken off the dust jacket because that's just how I read, and I'm starting with this book. But this is a book that I think I have high expectations for it, but I'm not exactly sure why, because I haven't heard very many people talking about it on BookTube. But for whatever reason, the idea of a poet writing about basketball, that really appeals to me. Basketball is a sport that has been very important to my family and my childhood growing up. My little brother played basketball, and so it was just a very large portion of my childhood, and even now in adulthood it's still integrated into family gatherings and whatnot. So I just feel like this is going to be a very touching book for me specifically. I just feel like it's also going to teach me a lot about the culture of basketball. This takes place mostly in 1990s Ohio, I believe, so that's going to add another element of like a new experience for me, because even though I was born in the 90s, I didn't really experience the 90s. I just don't remember it, for one thing. But I also didn't grow up in Ohio. I'm also white. This is written by a black man, and so you're getting elements of black culture in here that I wouldn't as a white woman. So I am not very far into it yet. I just finished the first, I guess it's the preface. It's not really the first chapter, but I am 38 pages in. So I haven't made it very far yet, but I can tell you for certain that this is the most poetic piece of literature I've ever read that's about basketball. It's absolutely beautiful. And you can definitely tell that this was written by a poet because of how just like beautiful and lyrical the language is. I'm kind of blown away by it so far. I'm not totally sure that I will be 100% engaged and invested in this language the whole time. Like, it's possible that it will get too flowery for me by the end, but that is yet to be seen. So far, I'm enjoying it. So far, I'm liking it a lot. So I just thought I would come in here and give you a little intro, even though I do have, I have already started reading. I'm excited about both of these. Thanks for coming along with me. If you'd like to join me with Nonfiction November, please do. This is a challenge for me as well as anyone else who wants to participate, where we read as much nonfiction as we can, or more nonfiction than usual. So that for you may be one nonfiction book in a month, and that would be great. You'll still be educating yourself, and I love that for you. Or if you're more like me and you already love nonfiction and you read a lot of it, just reading as much as I can in the nonfiction genre is a challenge for me in and of itself. And I made the fun bingo board that we can use as we go through this challenge. There's a story graph challenge that you can join if you like. And I would love to hear about what you're reading in the nonfiction genre. If you created any reading vlogs so far this month that have to do with nonfiction books, feel free to tag me in those so that I can see them, interact with them, and just enjoy your content and your reading experience with you. Thanks for being here. Let's get back to reading. I've made it a little bit further in the book since I last talked to you. I'm around page 150. Yeah. So I'm getting close to halfway through the book. I think that I made a correct prediction when I said the language might get too flowery for me. it is like reading a very, very long poem in a way. It is in a way that is enjoyable for most of the time, but I imagine I would have a better time reading this if I had the audiobook. I do have the audiobook on hold with Libby right now. So hopefully I'll be able to get that in my library before I finish this book. If not, I might still listen to a portion of it just to see how it compares to the actual like reading it with my eyes experience. But because it is so poetic, and because this author is a seasoned spoken word poet, I think that this would just be a lot more enjoyable to listen to. Like you have very large portions of very poetic language that can feel kind of disjointed at times, for me at least, and it makes it harder for me to really stick with the page, and it's easy for me to fall into the habit of kind of skimming through, especially whenever the lines are so short. Like you're hitting the enter key a lot on these pages, you know what I mean? But with that being said, there are some really, really beautiful portions of this book that have just really gotten me almost emotional at times, and it has been a really incredible read. I'm trying to find this one passage that I really, really liked a lot. Oh, this right here. He's talking about the celebration of homecoming and how important and monumental that is for his community and other communities like his own. And I want to read this portion to you just because, it just really spoke to me. So this is page 82 in my edition. He says, "I love the homecoming because I have known what it is to leave. I've seen the city I love from the sky just as I have seen the city I love from the cracks in between metal bars. Cherish the homecoming because you know what lasts forever and what does not. I love all manner of homecoming, all manner of coming home. I love whatever will send at people into the streets or whatever will get someone to fire up a grill, even if they don't really know what to do after the fire arrives except stand over it, poke at something with a fork, and throw their head back laughing into the breeze when someone calls them on their inability to get the food moving from the heat to the plate. I love whatever can feel like a good memory, even as it is already unfolding. Yes, for once, your face is in the paper, the good section, the section where no one is dead or divorced. Your name is in bold letters, not in the obituaries, not in a crime bulletin. We can cut this one out and put it in a frame, hang it lopsided next to the black Jesus, the gaudy cross. When you cross back into the neighborhood, driving slow with your windows down, the kids will follow you, running after the red glow of your taillights, all of them holding the paper, pointing at your face as if it is their own." Do you see what I mean? That's just good. That's just good. So I love portions like that so much. Like, they are just so magnificent and brilliant and emotional and touching. But for it to all be that poetic, it can lose me at times. It can lose me. But I'm really liking it so far. I think that there have been a lot of really insightful and valuable thoughts put into words here. And I was kind of surprised at how often the author talks about religion as well. The way that he talks about God is very interesting to me, and I hope to see more of that so that I can kind of understand more about his thoughts on spirituality. But it's very good so far. So far, I would recommend it. Probably the audiobook over the physical copy, but that is just an assumption based on the flowery nature of the writing and the poetry in this book. So it's a good experience thus far. let me start by apologizing. There's a construction crew next door, so if you can hear some background noise, that's why. But they're always there, so I can't just wait for them to not be there. I finished There's Always This Year. And the first thing I want to say is this is probably a 5-star audiobook, but I didn't read the audiobook. I still want to rate this really highly because it was beautiful and profound and poetic. However, it was a little bit too poetry wordy for me to read with my eyeballs. I really needed to be hearing this in the narration, I believe. But I'm still gonna give it 4 stars. Like, it was an amazing book. He covers so many large topics. He talks about love, he talks about belonging and what it means to leave home and return home. Obviously, he talks about sports and the way that sports can be so personal and meaningful to people. He talks about death. He talks about racism. He talks about the ways that Black children are villainized in media. He talks about what it was like to grow up in Cleveland, Ohio in the 90s. He really just covers everything. And honestly, if you go into this book looking to read about something, you're probably going to find it. Like, I really can't even begin to think about something that he didn't write about here. He wrote about cancer. He wrote about losing loved ones. He wrote about it feels like he wrote about everything under the sun. He wrote about God, about religion, about dreaming, and he really covered all of his bases here. I just had trouble staying connected to the flowery language, but I do think if I had listened to it on audio, it would have been much, much, much easier to stay engaged. So I think that as like a physical print reading experience, I think I might be being a little bit generous with my rating with the 4 stars. But because I just so strongly believe in the audiobook narration, because it's narrated by the author, it's poetry, it's gonna sound better when it's spoken almost 9 times out of 10. I do believe if I had listened to the audiobook, I would have given it 5 stars. But I don't know that for sure. So we're going to 4-star territory. That's where we're gonna sit. I really loved it. But I think the audiobook would have been a better experience for me. So now we're moving on to Year of the Tiger, An Activist's Life by Alice Wong. And I am very excited to read this book. I want to go ahead and just show you what I'm looking forward to the most is the pictures. Because this just looks so fun. Like, how creative is this? I know this has very little to do with like the actual writing, and I might not like this book, but the collaging in the middle of the book is enough for me to be like, this is awesome. I love this. So I am excited to read this. I am very intrigued by the style and format of this book, because it's kind of seeming like mixed media a little bit. Like, I'm seeing some interviews and Q&As. I'm seeing poetry in here. I'm seeing snack manifesto. So there's a lot going on in here, and I'm excited to get into it. So let's go. Okay, so I am almost 200 pages into Year of the Tiger, and I think I kind of have complicated feelings about it, because the overall tone of Alice's writing is very punchy, very snarky, at times very angry. We'll just say it's not it's not a sweet memoir about triumph and victory. And that's okay. That is the story that she wanted to write, and I respect that. But it is definitely, as far as like tone and attitude goes, it's not comfortable. And again, that is okay. Reading about disability, living with a disability, that's not going to be comfortable. That's kind of the whole point. The whole point of sharing her experience with disability and with activism in the disability space, it's just not going to be comfortable. So I get that, but it's just hard to read. The point is it is not an easy read. However, the speed of the read is much faster paced because of the way that it's formatted. You have interviews, you have short essays, you have recipes in here, you have poems. I've already showed you the snack manifesto, but then there's also a section, let me see if I can find it again. It's like a cat comic strip. And so you just have like a lot of varying forms of media represented, and that makes the read go by a little bit faster. And I think it's nice that she did it this way, because it lightens the mood a little bit. And that's another reason why also I don't mind the sarcastic nature of her writing sometimes, because it lifts the mood a little bit, even though she's talking about things that are really, really sad and difficult and anger inducing. She's able to write about it in a way that kind of almost makes you laugh at what's happening. It's like dark humor a little bit. I'm enjoying it to a certain extent, but like I said, it's not a comfortable read, and so it's kind of hard to explain my feelings about it. I do think it's very valuable and very insightful. I've done a lot of underlining. This is definitely a book that makes you think about accessibility and what that means, and all of the things that able-bodied people take for granted, like something as simple as swallowing or breathing or drinking out of a coffee cup without a straw. I think that's one of the things that like has impacted me the most so far, was her chapter on plastic and sustainability, and how the bans on single-use plastic, like plastic straws, have a pretty detrimental impact on the disabled community. It's such an ignored piece of the puzzle. Like, yes, we're trying to be sustainable, we're trying to reduce the amount of waste that we're putting into the world, but we also have to look at marginalized communities and how those laws, those bans, those regulations will impact them and their quality of life. So I really appreciated that portion. You're also seeing a lot of forms and receipts of how expensive being disabled is, and the ways that Medicaid is regulated and how that like plays a part in her everyday life. So like you get like an itemized receipt of all of the care that she has access to in a month, and she can't go over that amount of hours or she won't have that care for the rest of the month, that type of thing. And it's just so eye-opening to see the numbers written down like that, and to realize how limited disabled people can feel because of those regulations that are said to be designed in a way that people can't like mooch off of the system, when in reality the people that really need that care are being limited because they have to fit into this tiny little box of This is how many hours you can have of care this month. This is how much money you can have in your checking and savings account, or you don't qualify for this care anymore. Like, it's unfortunate to say the least. It's complicated, it's annoying. It's hard to read about. It's hard to read about all of the things that we still have not made accessible in America specifically. It was also interesting to read about her experience with school, because she graduated high school in, I think she said 1992, and the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, passed around that time. And so that was like the beginning of accessible public spaces and things like that. And before that point, she had very little, if any, accommodation when it came to accessibility. I don't think she was in a wheelchair until middle school. I might be getting that wrong. I'm not great about keeping timelines in my head, but at a certain point she was no longer on a walker and she was in a wheelchair, and there were very few like ramps that she could go up. There was one accessible bathroom on her entire college campus. The entire campus had one bathroom that she could use. Stuff like that is just like mind-boggling to me. I was born in 1998, so that was all like very before my time, but I know that there are still situations like that to this day where disabled people are just not taken care of well, and that is just, it's infuriating and it's sad to see, but it is very inspiring to see disabled communities that are like involved in the activist space and inspiring other disabled people to participate in voting and like all kinds of things. So this has a lot in it. Like I feel like it is extremely eye-opening and humbling, and it is just kind of blowing my mind a little bit, and I'm enjoying it to an extent, but again, it's hard to read at the same time. So it's very complicated, but extremely valuable. So I'm excited to keep reading. Good morning. I ended up finishing Year of the Tiger way faster than I expected to. And I do think that had a lot to do with the way it was formatted, with the Q&As and the extra little artsy things in there. It just made it go by so much quicker than I expected it to. So I am happy to announce that we have finished both of the books that we were supposed to read in this video. Woohoo! And both of the books I am rating 4 stars. They weren't perfect books, but they were both good. Let's do a little recap. So for There's Always This Year, I think my biggest problem with it was that I wasn't listening to it. I would have loved to hear all of this poetic, flowery language through the audiobook, but it was unavailable at Libby, so I had to settle for the print. And while the print version was still a good experience, it definitely got to a point where I was starting to get lost in the words, and I was having trouble finding the rhythm of the poetry that was being written. And so I just wasn't connecting with it quite as much as I would have liked to, but it was still beautiful and profound. And I can imagine myself rereading this as the audiobook later on, because I mean, it truly was an amazing read. I just really couldn't stay invested in it. I couldn't stay connected or engaged because I was just like focusing so hard on how it was being written, and that just wasn't working with me as much as I would have liked it to. But it was still a great book, and I definitely recommend it for basketball lovers and non-basketball lovers alike. You do not have to know anything about basketball to enjoy this book. It's about so much more than sports. It is about love and life and death and grace and rivalry and friendship, and there's just so much here. So I highly recommend it. I would recommend listening to the audiobook though, or maybe listening to them both, listening to the book and reading it at the same time, something like that. I think that will be a much better experience. And then we've got Year of the Tiger, which I think my biggest pushback with this one was the overall tone of the book. It just wasn't always something that I could, I don't know, I couldn't really relate to it. I think that a lot of what was written here was powered by anger towards the system, anger towards the government that we operate under, anger towards discrimination and inaccessibility, which I understand. I totally get that, and I accept that, and it's okay to be angry. It's understandable to be angry, but my passion and my want for change comes from such a different place that it's harder for me to really connect with such a harsh fire of passion. I don't know if that makes sense, but parts of it were just a little off-putting to me, and parts of it were very snarky and kind of like darkly funny. So it worked sometimes for me and it didn't work other times. I think where this book really succeeds is how vulnerable Alice is with her experiences. I loved the transparency. Like, she shares so much about what it means to be disabled and what it means to be an activist, and how those communities intersect. And it was really cool to read about in a lot of ways. I also loved the inserts, the photo inserts, the art that she included. There were several illustrations that were drawn in here that I really loved to look at. Lots of pictures in here too, which is always, it makes it so much more engaging to me to be able to see the people that she's writing about and to see her at different points in her life. Here's one of the illustrations. I loved that aspect. I loved that she covered such a wide range of topics and how different policy changes affected her and her community. I think, honestly, towards the end of the book, one of my favorite parts was her interview that she did with her mom. It was just so sweet and personal, and I think that was the moment that I really felt like I connected with her and her family, because it just felt like family. And they were talking about Chinese traditions and the things that they have learned and grown through. So it was just cool to read about that. But in the end, definitely a 4-star read for me. I think I liked Disability Visibility better for a couple of reasons. And maybe that's because I was able to get so many different people's stories, and it wasn't all in the tone of sarcastic, blunt, straightforward. So there was a little bit more softness in Disability Visibility than in this one. But overall, I do think Alice has a lot of incredible things to say. There's a lot to be learned here. I do want to read her other book at some point, but it just wasn't perfect, and that's okay. It just wasn't totally for me, but it could be for you. It could be for somebody else. So they were both good. Both books were good. I would call this a success. So now that we've finished both books, it's time to close out the vlog, and it's time for me to get ready for the next one, because I've already decided what I'm reading for next week's vlog, and I'm really excited about it. So subscribe if you would like to stick around and be here for next week. I try to post videos every Thursday, sometimes more if I'm feeling like I have some time to throw an extra one in there. If you have any thoughts on my thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comments, and give this video a like if you liked it. I would appreciate all of those things, any of those things, and I just really appreciate you for being here. So I hope you had fun. I hope you're enjoying Nonfiction November. Hope you're learning something. I appreciate every single one of you, and I can't wait to hang out with you next week. Bye.